Hey, what's up, Nashville? This is Beau Beach with the Free Speech Podcast, as always, brought to you by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, your AI enhanced broker for sellers in Nashville and the Southeast. We're going to catch you up on the 10 most important stories of the past few weeks. I will tell you on a personal level, I am actively trying to beat my addiction to energy drinks. I just have this addictive personality. I take everything too far. So, my brain is moving a little bit slower than it's used to, but in the long term, it's going to be good for my health. So we're going to get into this energy drink free, and we're going to push through it. The first story on our list today is a story that I handpicked. I usually don't sort out the order of the stories for the podcast, but today I chose to because this is the biggest story we've heard in the commercial real estate business for quite some time. JP Morgan Chase predicts 4 consecutive interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve. Okay? 4 meetings, 4 cuts being predicted by one of the most influential investment banks on planet Earth. Thank you. All of my prayers are seemingly soon to come true. We'll get into that. Next story. Terry Black's owners plan second concept. And this might just be my life is too busy thing, but I missed the idea that Terry Black's barbecue was coming to Nashville, let alone now a second concept is coming. So perhaps you did too. I'll catch you up on that. The Boring Company, right? Elon Musk's tunnel company, the Boring Company, is sharing more information on its plans for a tunnel in Nashville. I'm going to share those updates with you. The East Bank site, known as the scrapyard, right, sells for $245 million. I would be willing to bet that is the highest price ever paid in United States history for a scrapyard. I will tell you that story. The UFC is moving to Paramount, right? This is a big story. This is kind of a sports story. I don't watch a lot of sports. I do like watching UFC. So moving from a pay-per-view model where it's $80 just to watch, not to mention it's on too late at night for old dad to even stay up that late, but $80 just to watch a fight is very, very excessive. They're now moving to Paramount Plus, which is something I already subscribe to because of all their great content, but it's at a much, much lower price point. So that's a big deal for UFC fans. I'll tell you that story. I'm going to give you a residential market update, right? We're not in the business of selling homes and condos. That doesn't mean that the residential market means nothing to us, right? I'm a property owner myself. I kind of, from a distance, pay attention to what the residential market is doing. I don't care that much. So I'm going to bring you kind of up to date on kind of that big picture view of what the residential market is doing. Give you just enough to understand what's going on there. A Rutledge Hill Tower gets downsized. We picked this story because this is pretty commonplace over the past few years, whereby you've got these big, impressive new developments planned for a number of years, and now they're getting downsized or right-sized before requesting additional approvals to move forward. So I think this is on trend, and we can talk about that trend as we discuss this Rutledge Hill Tower. A downtown skyscraper sells for $55 million, which is a large loss. More interesting than even the large loss is they are contemplating converting much of this office space to hotel use. I'll tell you that story. And then another non-conventional use of office space. A Franklin office building is set to be converted after its unconventional sale. I will tell you what they're converting it to, and I bet you cannot guess. That'll be our last story of the day. So let's get into it. My favorite story, as I mentioned at the top of the show, JP Morgan predicts 4 consecutive rate cuts by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is expected to cut interest rates by 25 basis points at each of its next 4 meetings, bringing the policy rate to 3.5%. The brokerage also noted a potential shift in Fed leadership with President Trump's nomination of economist Stephen Moran to replace Governor Adriana Kugler, which could lead to deeper institutional reforms at the central bank. So I'm going to dumb this down way too much because I don't know exactly what I'm talking about here. But, Too Late Powell also has a board that he reports to or works with or takes guidance from. And on that board, that board is also making votes. Every time the Fed meets, the board members also vote whether to cut rates or not cut rates. So one thing that Trump did is he's working to overhaul the board. He can't get rid of Too Late, but he can perhaps make some replacements on the board, which is something that is affecting how folks see this playing out. The brokerage cited signs of labor market weakness and uncertainty surrounding President Donald Trump's latest Fed nomination as reasons for the revised outlook, right? So these are kind of rolling outlooks that are constantly being updated as investment banks do. Traders now price a 91% chance of a rate cut in September compared with just 37% the week before. So expectations went from 37% to 91% that we're getting at least a quarter point rate cut in September. I understand they'll meet 3 more times by the end of the year. So let's use round numbers, right? If the mortgage interest rate on average is somewhere about 6.5% by the end of the year, which will be here before you know it, we could be looking at 5.5% interest rates, which would be so lovely for our business, for everyone that's been looking to buy a home. I don't know if it's going to have a positive effect on prices, right? Interest rates go down, usually the asset price goes up. So, my wife brought this up to me the other day. She pays more attention than I do to people that want to buy and sell homes, whatever. I said, well, if I was actually that person that was looking to buy a new home in a market like today, I would actively be trying to get that replacement home now. And the reason for that is if those interest rates really move by a full percent by the end of the year, prices are going to be higher at that point. So prices will be going up. You could lock in what could arguably be a lower price today and then refinance out in the future, or just take out floating rate debt to make that purchase. So I don't think one should wait on the sidelines until these interest rate cuts happen, because I do think it's going to push asset prices higher, in this case home prices. I think it would be better to lock in an arguably lower price now and then finance with floating rate debt, or just have some patient money whereby you reevaluate in 6 months whether or not a refinance makes sense. That's what I would do. I know it's harder to do in practice. I know it's harder to do just qualifying for the mortgage at 6.5%, right? If everything's based on what your tax returns say, it's hard just to qualify for the 6.5% mortgage, even if you're willing to pay the interest. That's what a lot of folks haven't realized about the past few years. It's not just the added interest expense every month that you're paying. It's the inability to qualify because your tax returns don't say the right things to justify the bank giving you that loan, even if you're willing to pay it. So the availability of financing has been just as crushing as the added interest rate costs associated with financing. So these interest rate cuts are going to be a huge deal for the commercial real estate business. Again, I'm not in the residential business, but I think it's pretty straightforward to understand will be a big deal for the residential business as well. All right, let's move to our next story. Terry Blacks of Austin, Texas fame, right? Owners plan a second concept. This was presented to me. I said, what's the first concept? Terry Black's barbecue? Where's that going? So let me bring you up. Perhaps you're also too busy to keep up with all this stuff. The group behind popular Terry Black's barbecue is bringing a second restaurant to Nashville. Texas-based Black Family Hospitality will open Opal's Oysters, next door to the already announced Terry Black's Barbecue at 1220 Rosa L. Parks Boulevard. Terry Black's Barbecue was founded by siblings Christina, Michael, and Mark Black in 2014, so just over 10 years ago. You know, they must know what they're doing in Austin, Texas. Named in honor of their father, Nashville will be the 6th location and first out-of-state spot for Terry Black's Barbecue and the second location for Opal's. So, so this is what, store number 7 and 8 for a company that was founded about 10 years ago, which is really pretty impressive, difficult to do. An LLC affiliated with Michael Black purchased the 4-parcel Germantown property earlier this year for $7.2 million for the dirt. So 7.2 for the dirt. You're going to put a Terry Black's Barbecue. Right next to it, you're going to do an Opal's Oysters. And if you're asking me, I'm going barbecue 100 times out of 100 times before you're selling me some oysters in Nashville, Tennessee. But again, to each their own. Let's keep moving. The Boring Company is sharing more information on its plans for a tunnel connecting downtown Nashville and the Nashville International Airport. Here are those updates. Trained drivers will operate Tesla vehicles inside the tunnel. You know, a lot of folks think the Teslas that are operating this tunnel are 100% autonomous, and it's just not quite there yet. So you're going to have real people taking you back and forth through the tunnel in these Teslas. Passengers will pay a fare. It's not going to be free, right? So the Boring Company is putting in this tunnel at no cost to the taxpayer, but it makes sense that the passengers will pay a fare to use the tunnel. The company has established one tunnel boring machine launch site near the Tennessee State Capitol and is working to establish 3 more sites. So this is where the boring machine will sit and enter into the earth to carve out this one tunnel. They're going to be working from 4 different sites where they pop in and out. The company plans to start with 1 boring machine and scale to at least 6. Actual tunneling could begin by year's end. Every 2 months, the company will publish a blog post on the project, and the first is expected to be released on October 1st. So, I don't know what to tell you. If you don't think a tunnel, an underground tunnel connecting downtown to BNA that is not paid for by taxpayers is cool, if you think it's not cool, I would suggest that perhaps you have some mental problems, because this is a lovely thing that is available to folks who want to use it and pay for it. And if you don't want to use it and you don't want to pay for it, good for you. You're no worse off. This is purely a privately funded project that will be used by the people that want to use it. And if you don't like it, maybe you have TDS, maybe you have Trump derangement syndrome, and Elon Musk really triggers you in all the impressive things that he's doing, right? Maybe you have some problems that you need to talk more to your shrink about, because I do think talking to your shrink is going to make you a crazier person. So just get it all out there, stew on your problems, think about your problems all the time. I think they call it rumination, right? Depressed people are always depressed because they're always thinking about their problems. Rumination. I might be wrong about that. I've actually never been to a psychiatrist or a shrink or whatever they're called. But I do agree with the idea. If you're constantly obsessing about all of your problems in life, perhaps you're going to be a less happy person, right? Makes sense to me. Let's keep moving. East Bank site including the scrapyard, sells for $245 million. Investors buy 47 acres, which include multiple industrial properties on the Cumberland River. The new owner of the 12 parcels is called TEB LLC, which is affiliated with local investors David Brierly and Sam Lingo, among other investors. What makes this interesting is when you're talking about $245 million for land on which to build, not to mention the potential, hazardous materials that perhaps are here on a former scrapyard. Usually, the buyers are not going to be local guys that say, hey, let's get a group of local guys together and pay $245 million for some land that might have some problems. Usually, it's going to be a big institutional investor that swoops in and purchases a site like this. But what makes it cool is these are local guys that figured out how to get this thing done, which I would tell you is a huge undertaking, massive undertaking. They also landed a loan for $136.9 million. So they had to come up with $80 million down, so they raised a lot of money. They borrowed a lot of money to have dirt on which to build over the next 10 years or however long it's going to take. All the while servicing $136 million in debt. So not an easy thing to do with the property that's currently not generating any type of cash flow, right? So you not only have to have deep pockets to qualify for the mortgage, you've got to have deep pockets to put the $80 million down, you've got to have deep pockets to carry the $136 million note until these projects are built out and cash flowing. And then you've got to have all the other resources necessary to actually get the construction financing to build on your $245 million of land. So this is super big balls territory right here. Enormous grapefruit-sized balls are what these local guys are doing. So salute to them. The buyers did not announce their intentions for the just acquired property, and no kidding. They're going to need to do about 50 different projects here. They're not going to announce their intentions. They're going to have to carve this bad boy up into 50 different projects for it all to make sense. This purchase represents more than 50 local investors banding together on a mission to do something special for our Nashville community. The latest East Bank transaction is equivalent to about $5.21 million per acre, with both the acreage and per acre figures representing two of the more significant marks for urban Nashville property not located downtown. For these 50 local guys that had the kahunas to pay $245 million for some land, I salute you. I hope it really pays off, but if nothing else, you have my unconditional respect for the amount of courage it takes to take on a project like that. Unbelievable. UFC moves to Paramount Plus. Paramount and ESPN have inked epic deals to put a headlock on UFC, so UFC is going to Paramount, and WWE is going to ESPN plus some other stations. So the same company owns both UFC and WWE. They call themselves TKO, which stands for Technical Knockout, an expression used in boxing. So TKO owns ESPN, they own UFC. They just renegotiated deals on where these entertainment concepts will be displaying. Both leagues are changing channels in 2026, ending the existing pay-per-view structure with Disney's ESPN Plus service, thanks to a staggering $7.7 billion U.S. rights deal. So that's $7.7 billion just for the U.S. rights to the UFC. UFC is an international fighting organization where many of the cards are held in other countries. Most of the UFC roster is non-U.S. fighters, right? So this is 7.7 billion just for the rights in the U.S. Under the new 7-year contract, all 13 of the UFC's flagship number special events and 30 fight nights per year will stream over the Paramount Plus platform. Some of these events are also expected to air on CBS. Watching UFC just got cheaper. A standard numbered pay-per-view costs $79.99 per event, plus the ESPN subscription, which is about $12 a month. That's what it used to be. $80 per event plus $12 a month for ESPN Plus. Paramount Plus is considerably less expensive. Its monthly subscription costs $8 per month with ad or $13 per month ad-free. Hey, can we talk about this? If you can pay $5 extra per month and not have ads, dude, pay the $5. Who is trying to have their programming interrupted by commercials? I mean, that just destroys the viewer experience. I long for the day that I can watch live sports without commercial interruptions. I know it's coming eventually. I don't know how they're going to make it happen. They have to make it happen. Quit interrupting the thing I want to watch with your stupid commercials. And if it only costs $5 a month to eliminate it, please scrape together the $5. Do not subject yourself to additional commercial interruptions. But we digress there. ESPN may be leaving the octagon, but the sports network is now headed to the pro wrestling ring after signing a 5-year, $1.6 billion rights deal with WWE for its major events. I will admit, I have no interest in WWE, also known as professional wrestling, but I'm trying to bring you some interesting content here, so bear with me, we're almost done. So this deal is a lot crazier. So they've got monthly premium live events on ESPN. They've got Monday Night Raw on Netflix. They've got something called WWE NXT on the CW. And they've got Friday Night SmackDown on USA Network. So this deal is pushing WWE all over the place. But the UFC is coming to Paramount Plus, except for some real heavy hitter shows that are going to expect it to air right there on CBS. So then it's going to be free. But I would suggest that Paramount Plus is impressive enough to cough up the $13 a month, not the $8. Don't get cheap and subject yourself to ads. Pay the $13, a lot of good content, and then you've got the UFC coming too. So that's very cool. Let me give you a residential update here, okay? Comparing this July to the last July, so that's year over year, right? We're trying to understand how this July stacked up to last July. The number of closings went up by 3% this July relative to last July, right? So closings are up. The median price for a single family home was $525,000, an increase from last year of $500,000. I'm using round numbers here. So last July, $500,000. This July, $525,000. 3% more deals closed than this time last year. Inventory at July's end was up 20% from the mark the same month a year ago and equal to a 5-month supply. So this is interesting. We've got 20% more homes on the market for sale this July than we did at the same time last year. So closings are up 3%, but supply is up 20%. And 20% is equal to a 5-month supply, taking into consideration how many properties are sold each month. The average number of days on the market for a single family home in July was 50. For context, back in 2023, I don't know why we're going all the way back there, but we are, it was about 40 days. So in the last 2 years, it's taken 10 days longer to get a property sold. That's nothing. 50 days is nothing. In the commercial real estate business, you ain't closing nothing in 50 days. It's taken at least 75 days, best case scenario. A lot of deals are closing in that 90 to 120 range, depending on what you got going. Land is taking a year. So 40 versus 50, cry me a river. What's the difference in 10 days? Conventional 30-year fixed-rate mortgages offer an average interest rate of approximately 6.7% today. So I said 6.5, nice and round. 6.7 maybe is a little bit more accurate. An increase in overall closings and pending sales signals continued buyer activity. Okay, I'm not sure how enlightening that is, but so here's what you need to know. Compared to a year ago, closings are up 3%, but supply is up 20%. Right? The median price went up 25,000, and the average interest rate during the period was about 6.7%. They estimate. These are guesstimates, right? So that's where we're at. The Nashville housing market has not slowed down. There is more to choose from, but the deals are getting done at higher prices, and more deals are getting done than at this time last year. I've got 3 more stories for you here. Let's get started. A Rutledge Hill Tower gets downsized. A mixed-use building planned for downtown's Rutledge Hill has seen its height reduced. Previously planned a 24-story building to offer hotel, apartment, and restaurant space and to rise on a 0.9-acre site at 600 4th Avenue South, with the property to be consolidated with a parcel at 616 4th Avenue South for the hotel project. Pinnacle Hospitality Partners has chosen to reduce the planned building to just 17 floors by eliminating the apartment component, right? So 24 stories down to 17 stories. Now we're talking about hotel and restaurant space, eliminated the apartment space. I suspect that's because there is an abundance of luxury apartments downtown, and it's hard with the land cost, with the construction cost, with the interest rate cost. It's hard to build anything that pencils out that isn't considered a luxury apartment, right? So if you're going to build apartments, they've got to be luxury apartments. And you look at the supply of luxury apartments in downtown Nashville right now, and the numbers don't look good. Many of those projects are asking $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per month for a 2-bedroom. They're having to offer 3 months free on the front end to get those deals done. So I can understand why the apartment component was removed, and that's what's downsizing the project. This is kind of normal everyday stuff. You have to realize what people don't fully appreciate is the role that the lender plays in all of these developments. You really have to sell the lender on your vision by using actual examples from the real world. Here's a comparable project to what we're trying to do. Here's how it leased up. Here's how long it took. Here's what tenants are paying. You've got to provide evidence that they should lend you the money because your project is going to work. And if you can't provide the evidence because those apartment projects aren't working real well right now, your lender is going to say, hey, the apartment concept doesn't work. We're not lending you the money. And then they have to go back to the drawing board and say, well, we might have to eliminate the apartment concept if we're going to be able to get this loan. People don't fully appreciate how much the lender affects all of these deals. As a commercial real estate broker myself, the scariest participant in every deal is not the other side. The scariest participant in every deal is the lender. The lender does crazy things. The lender plays by their own rules. The lender isn't necessarily honest with buyers when they say, oh yeah, we'd love to make that loan for you. Yeah, go ahead. We're going to have to get a lot more information before we actually give you the loan. But in concept, we would love to borrow you money, right? So don't get me started on lenders. I mean, they've had a tough go of it the last few years too, but a lot of lenders just aren't very forthcoming about whether or not they're actually interested in making loans, right? They'll say they're interested in making loans, but realistically, they just want this very narrow, risk-free borrower. And that's not really what most buyers are. So they say, oh yeah, we're still lending money, but just to this A plus plus borrower. And they're not real honest about that. So when the average Joe tries to borrow that money, all of a sudden they're denied because they aren't the A plus plus borrower. We need banks that are going to lend people money, and I hope we're finally going to get back to that place. If the project materializes, the hotel building will offer 257 hotel rooms and 130 below-grade parking spaces. They acquired the land on which to build this project in 2016 for about $3 million. So the story there is apartments are a tough sell right now for lenders, so they eliminated the apartment component so they can go out and borrow that money to build the hotel component. That's what I take away from that. Downtown Skyscraper sells for $55 million. Seller of Fifth Third Center takes a major loss on sale of office tower eyed for hotel conversion. Downtown Skyscraper Fifth Third Center sold for $89 million less than the figure for which it changed hands just 6 years ago. So keep in mind, I do think this property sold as part of a larger portfolio. So perhaps the price that was allocated to this property within the portfolio isn't exactly accurate. I question whether or not this is truly an $89 million loss. Perhaps they just allocated the portfolio price differently to each individual property. I'm not exactly sure. That'll probably come out. This is new information. The new owner of the Class A tower is a New York LLC affiliated with Pivot Real Estate Partners. The seller was also New York-based global private equity firm, the Blackstone Group, which paid approximately $145 million for the property in 2019. The high-rise is being eyed for conversion to a hotel with nearly 500 rooms. Opened in 1986, nearly 650,000 square feet of leasable space in the 31-story tower. The building is home to regional headquarters of Cincinnati-based Fifth Third Bank and offers a ground-level Starbucks. In May, Fifth Third Bank announced it would vacate the tower and relocate its Nashville headquarters to Germantown's Neuhoff district. Quote, this is a rare opportunity to own a preeminent property at a basis well below its replacement cost, unquote. Today, the Fifth Third Center ranks among Nashville's 9 tallest buildings. The city's 3 tallest structures, each more than 500 square feet, are the AT&T Tower, the Batman Building, the Four Seasons Hotel and Residences, and 505, the Giordana Apartment Building. So, not a great look for office in the downtown core, right? This is part of a bigger theme where office users are trying to get farther and farther away from the craziness known as Broadway. The downtown core is really going forward, going to be a place to live, a place to party, a place to have fun. Less and less, I think it's going to be a place to work. You've got folks moving over to the Neuhoff area. You've got folks that are going to be moving to the East Bank. You've got folks that are going to be moving to Music Row. You've got folks moving to Germantown. You've got folks moving to Midtown, Germantown. I forgot all of them I've said there. But there are so many options for office users now that don't have to deal with the craziness of Broadway. Broadway, if you're not familiar, really is quite a scene. I mean, the favorite pastime on Broadway is to get as drunk as you can get and just stumble around and listen to loud music and just see how far you can take it. And if you're someone that's showing up for work, that is not the environment that is conducive to making money, not to mention the headaches related to getting in and out of the building, all the different parking challenges downtown. So I think this is part of a larger trend in the downtown core. I also think that is why you're seeing this buyer really taking a hard look at hotel use rather than office use, because that's the type of use that makes sense downtown more than office does. Even though this is a beautiful property, this is one of the trophy buildings historically in downtown Nashville. It's now selling for a gigantic loss, losing its anchor tenant and perhaps being repositioned for a new use, which is hotel. So I think that really tells a story about the office building business downtown. And it's not necessarily a good one, but perhaps it all makes sense in the end. Lastly, a Franklin office building is set to be converted after its unconventional sale. Franklin Classical School paid $10.35 million for a Cool Springs office building located at 1021 Windcross Court and plans to turn it into the permanent home for Franklin Classical School, which is hot between temporary spaces for the last 3 decades. The newly purchased office building offers 65,000 square feet of space across 3 floors. The building was constructed in 2000 and previously served as a single-tenant office building. Franklin Classical School is a private institution that serves students from kindergarten through 12th grade. So, you've even got office buildings in Cool Springs being converted to uncommon uses. Not a hotel here, but a school. And I can tell you that, I was affiliated with a private school years ago, and kind of as some pro bono work, we were trying to find a permanent location for them. So many of these private schools are just kind of bouncing around from temporary space to temporary space because there aren't real traditional school properties available for purchase. The zoning is hard for schools. So what happens is a lot of the time the zoning lines up for schools to be located in industrial parks. So you've actually got a lot of smaller private schools occupying industrial type space because that's the only space they could find available that they're allowed to use. So I would tell you that if you're a private school and you really don't have the cash for ground up construction, which is hard, that's what you want. If you're a legitimate private school and you can build ground up on some properly zoned land, that is absolutely the move, but that is very hard for a small private school to do. It's easier to occupy some second generation space, but with the prices of everything, especially in Williamson County and Davidson County, as high as they are, even if you're willing to pay the price to reconfigure those spaces, most of the time the zoning really doesn't work for their type of use. There's some additional rules and regulations that school users need to play by that office users don't, for example, or industrial users for this example. So I would tell you it's very, very difficult to source space for private schools. And that's what's being reflected here. A Cool Springs office building, $10 million for the building, still got to reconfigure it to make sense as a school. But I think this is a big win for private schools everywhere because, my children have been homeschooled most of their life. My oldest is going to Brentwood Academy now. I've been affiliated with a lot of different private schools over the years. I can tell you it is a real struggle for these private schools just to get students, stay profitable, grow, find space that makes sense. It's difficult because you don't really want your kids at recess playing in the parking lot of an industrial building, right? So you're forcing all of these school users into space that's not really set up at all for school use, but because that is the one type of zoning that complies with school use, that's where they end up. So it is a very, very, very difficult challenge to find suitable space for private schools if you don't have the ability to build brand new, which most of them don't. So this is a big win for private schools everywhere. I hope this works. They must have quite the business going right now to be able to take down a $10 million property and then still renovate it and then get people in there in the future. So, that's awesome. It's awesome. You don't hear it very often. I'm a guy that celebrates when people are doing impressive things. And I think that is a very impressive thing for a private school to do. So I hope we've added a little bit of value, perhaps even entertained you a bit. I did it all energy drink free, which I feel personally good about. I'm actively trying to overcome 3 different addictions right now. I'll spare you all the details, but I'm also injured, so I can't lift weights. So I'm unable to work out and battling 3 different addictions that I'm almost going to call conquered, right? Not quite there, but I think I did okay, all things considered. So thanks so much for listening. This has been the Free Speech Podcast presented by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, your AI-enhanced broker for sellers in Nashville and the Southeast. We'll talk to you again in a few weeks. See you then.